people fucking know about it.
What is Pac-Man fever and who's likely to get it? Now, just about any.
Let's watch a little bit more about NXIVM.
Pac-Man has come out of the video arcade
from friend of the show, Phillion, from a month ago.
Closet and is moving into your living room. For many people, there's only one way to unwind after a tough day of playing Pac-Man when the wrist is sore and the thumb is blistered, and that's to read a good book. But many people say the book tells you nothing. One of them, a math, physics, biology major from RPI, Keith Rainier.
You've seen financial scam corporations and you've seen nefarious cults, but has anyone ever succeeded in putting them together?
Did you cover the protests in China? I have yet to cover the protests in China, but I will.
Founded in 1998 and based in Albany, New York, NXIVM was a self-proclaimed personal development MLM or multi-level marketing company. Wealthy members would offset their entry costs by recruiting new members. In other words, a pyramid scheme. NXIVM attracted a variety of notable individuals, including actors and children of powerful oligarchs. But NXIVM was not always affluent or well-known. In fact, it began under a different name: Executive Success Programs. The name sounds straight out of a corporate starter pack. Executive Success Programs.
Hustlers University, baby. Hustlers fucking University.
Were courses designed to, quote, actualize human potential in business, relationships, and interpersonal connections. The program was marketed as a series of workshops that ensured you could be successful in all areas of life. A proverbial fix-all that appealed to people looking for a sense of community, accomplishment, or extrinsic motivation. NXIVM has two founders, President Nancy Salzman, nicknamed Prefect, and Keith Rainier, leader, co-founder, and mastermind behind the grand manipulation that would transpire, also known as Vanguard. You would think that these are Call of Duty clan names, but in fact, they are actually characteristics of a cult. As a young adult, Rainier was intrigued by Isaac Asimov's science fiction novel, Second Foundation.
Bro, dude, all of these fucking cults, man, every single one is just like, it's always science fiction. These motherfuckers will literally read science fiction and go, that's the real world now for me. How? I mean, famously, L. Ron Hubbard, science fiction writer. Okay?
Which he said inspired his efforts.
There's always like a couple things you could point out that almost always, there's always a couple things that almost always are interestingly a pattern you can observe with this. There's always sex involved, okay? There's always like the cult leader wants to like fuck everyone and then like no one else is allowed to fuck. And also, for some weird reason, their obsession with science fiction.
At NXIVM, Second Foundation, published in 1953, portrays themes of telepathy, mind control, behavior modification, and manipulation. One example from the book is the Mentalics.
Sex, sci-fi, and drugs. The third S is drugs.
Futuristic robots that use special abilities to read and shape the minds of others to further a specific agenda. To best understand Rainier, there are two stories from his childhood in particular that encapsulate his philosophy. First, his father James Rainier, when talking about his son's upbringing, is quoted as saying, "What we did is we told Keith about how gifted and how intelligent he was. And he said it was almost like a switch went off, and suddenly overnight he turned into like Jesus Christ, and that he was superior and better than everybody, like he was a deity. He said that it was that dramatic and that profound." According to his father, his simple words of encouragement led Rainier to think he was—
Damn, bro, they always are like, be positive about your children, okay? Like, build their confidence by gassing them up. Turns out maybe you shouldn't have done that, okay? Turns out what happens is sometimes you gas them up too far, okay? And then they become this thing, whatever the fuck this is. The only lesson that you should be teaching your children is at the top of the hour, there's a 6-second ad break. Okay? And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. Okay? Going forward in the future, you tell your children, if they no longer want to see those fucking ads, they need to subscribe. Okay? At the top of the hour. For $5 or for free. That's the lesson I impart upon you as the daycare provider here. Okay? You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Here's the 1 minute ad break now.
Was a god. This level of narcissism
I'll never tell my children anything. Okay, don't even teach them any valuable lessons.
combined with his sociopathic behavior were the driving forces behind NXIVM's success. Rainier's god complex would be imprinted in his brain, becoming an obsession. No one was going to tell Keith Rainier what to do. The second story, told by Barbara Boucher, one of Rainier's former partners, recalled a time Keith told her about his youth. Quote, "Dozens of young girls were calling the house and Rainier's mother was overhearing his conversations with them, where he was telling every single girl the same thing. I love you. You're the special one. You're important. You are the only one in my life and I love you." And she says he's saying this to all these girls. He's clearly lying because all of them are not special. But you know what is special? Browsing the internet with the help of today's video sponsor, ExpressVPN. And thank you
Homie
to
hit the
Express
fucking,
for
homie hit the
mass
lineup.
manipulation. And Keith Rainier would never grow out of this deranged phase of his life. According to the Albany Times Union, at the age of 24, Rainier
Chat is sheep, brother. 10-10, really? Oh, when Philion does it, 10-10. But when I say it, when I do it, it's 0 out of 10. I see how it is, dude.
allegedly seduced and sexually
Crazy. Y'all are the worst.
Melita, a 15-year-old girl he met in a theater group. Melita couldn't tolerate the abuse for long, and she ultimately ended their relationship. But Rainier was introduced to her friend, Gina Hutchinson, another 15-year-old whom he would also abuse. Heidi Hutchinson, the sister of Gina, confronted Rainier once after he had entered through her sister's window. He responded with, quote, "Gina is a Buddhist goddess, meant to be with me." Right. Part of his perversion was that he was able to create an environment and power dynamic in which his manipulation was presented as the truth, and everyone else's modus operandi was wrong. Rainier would often sleep with other women, which made Gina understandably distraught. As if this illegal relationship wasn't enough, it was only made worse by Rainier, saying that his actions of polyamory empowered women. Gina would endure an on and off relationship for over 10 years with Rainier. At Consumers Byline Incorporated,
Told you.
Rainier's first MLM, founded in 1990, Gina decided not to reveal negative characteristics about him during an agency report so that his goals of, quote, money, power, and achievement were not disrupted. Meanwhile, she had been drained both mentally and physically due to Rainier's constant deceit and abuse. Tragically, at the age of 33, she was found dead in her car near Woodstock, New York. She was allegedly...
Bro, I literally, oh, that's so sick. I got a 921 on my second one because all you fucking suckers unironically gave 10-10 to Philion. You gave 10-10 to Philion. Sorry, I know it's a tragic moment, and we're going to get back to that in a second. But you guys literally got suckered into voting 10-10 for his, and the bot picked it up as though you were giving it to me. Congratulations, chat. You fucking played yourselves, okay? You did. You got baited. Oh my God, I couldn't have fucking wrote it like this if I tried, baby. Sorry. That tastes delicious. Okay, let's get back to this. Sorry. Trigger warning, suicide.
New York. She was allegedly instantly killed by a self-inflicted shotgun wound to the head. Gina's was corroborated by police and autopsy reports, but theories online speculate that she may have been killed by Rainier. Heidi Hutchinson, to this day, believes Rainier caused Gina severe emotional stress, resulting in her death. In the same year his MLM was founded, Rainier met Tony Natalie, a top seller of CBI who would soon divorce her husband and start a relationship with him. The structure of CBI led to 25 different states investigating the company, but ultimately New York would pursue them legally, filing a lawsuit alleging the company was a pyramid scheme. And in 1996, the Attorney General of New York permanently shut down Consumers Byline Incorporated. According to the Times-Union, Rainier was forced to pay a $40,000 fine and sign a consent order preventing him from, quote, promoting, offering, or granting participation in a chain distribution scheme. However, Keith Rainier's habits would not change. He went on to create other businesses that failed, all while smooth-talking or abusing women into sleeping with him. Christine Milanikos, winner of the title Miss Michigan, met Rainier in 1998 after going through a divorce. According to James Adato and Jennifer Gish's article titled In Rainier's Shadow, Milanikos recalled Rainier once explaining, quote, how there was a profound event that would often happen to the women who became intimate with him. Sometimes they would even see a blue light. Ultimately, I agreed to be intimate with Keith, and it was just as he said. I even saw a blue light, but I don't think I told him so. I remember thinking, wow, my brain is really susceptible to the power of suggestion. Besides being a womanizer, Rainier found time to create a new company called Executive Success Programs with partner Nancy Salzman. A New York Times article describes Nancy as a nurse and practitioner of hypnosis who preached a pseudoscience known as NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It is often touted by the likes of Tony Robbins or other self-proclaimed moguls who believe they have the secrets necessary to tap into other people's minds. The company launched with the aim of offering self-improvement techniques, but was rebranded a couple years later to NXIVM or NXIVM. The Hollywood Reporter asserts Rainier adopted his nickname Vanguard based on his favorite arcade game in which destroying others grants you more power. This anecdote alone provides insight into Rainier's self-awareness. He knew NXIVM was not for others. It was for him. A bullshit company that existed solely for him to play out his perversions. With prior experience from his other multi-level marketing companies, NXIVM had been steadily progressing until 2002, when Rainier and Salzman successfully recruited Sarah and Claire Bronfman. The Bronfman family was a wealthy Canadian family known for acquiring Seagrams and building a billion-dollar beverage empire. The girls became devoted followers of Rainier and even backed him financially.
That's why I'm a Canada Dry boy, you know what I'm saying? That's how you know. Canada Dry all day.
However, Rainier simply saw them as legitimizers. If he could recruit them, then he could recruit anyone. Over time, Sarah and Claire would become Rainier's confidants and part of his inner circle. For the heiresses of the Seagram fortune, it must have been easy to take a course at NXIVM, but for the average person, it was incredibly expensive. NXIVM recruitment included programs and courses that would range from $2,000 to $7,500. Additionally, NXIVM upsold courses called intensives, which were conducted for 12 hours a day for 16 days straight. Former NXIVM member Frank Parlato told CNBC News that, quote, you'd take a $5,000 course, and as soon as you were done with that, you'd be told, now you're really ready to take the next one. The courses themselves were broken down into modules, with each module teaching a different topic. One example is the module named Dracula and His Ghouls, which supposedly taught members about psychopaths and their followers. Quite ironic, if you ask me. During each
what the
course,
fuck?
Members would
You know that course didn't take. Because if it was actually good, the motherfuckers would be like, hold up now. Hold on now. Like, they'd know. They'd get it. By the way, for those of you who are wondering how we got here, remember, this is the reason why we got here. The guy, James Lindsay, is like friends with one of the cult members who like still defends the cult leader, who is now in prison for child sex trafficking. So just remember that. And he like still defends her.
recite the 12-point NXIVM mission statement, pledging to purge themselves of, quote, all parasite and envy-based habits, to enroll others, and to ethically control as much of the money, wealth, and resources of the world as possible within my success plan. This ethos fooled many members, as the exact opposite was playing out without their knowledge. For one particular member, NXIVM may have taken their purge to a new level. In 2002, Kristen Snyder had seen an advertisement about NXIVM, aimed at helping individuals unlock their potential. For over a year, Snyder eagerly participated in NXIVM classes until she attended a 16-day intensive course in Anchorage, Alaska. Her spouse, Heidi Clifford, told the Times-Union, Snyder had become, quote, sleep-deprived, delusional, and during her stay at the intensive, Snyder was last seen leaving her hotel in distress. To this day, no one is certain what actually occurred, but Anchorage police speculate Snyder traveled to Resurrection Bay, where she committed by deliberately capsizing in a kayak. Her disappearance or death is still a mystery, but an apparent note found by police gives us insight into her final thoughts. I attended a course called Executive Success Programs, also known as NXIVM, based out of Anchorage, Alaska, and Albany, New York. I was brainwashed, and my emotional center of the brain was killed or turned off. I still have feeling in my external skin, but my internal organs are rotting. Please contact my parents if you find me or this note. I am sorry, life. I didn't know I was already dead. May we persist into the future. On the second page, she wrote, no need to search for my body. Wherever Rainier would go, death followed. By 2003, NXIVM had approximately 4,000 people take part in their courses, though it wouldn't be until 2006 when Rainier would find his most dedicated recruit. Kristen Crook, best known for her role in the series Smallville, joined NXIVM. Almost immediately after, co-founder Nancy Salzman and her daughter Lauren traveled to recruit more members with perceived fame or leverage. They found Crook's Smallville co-star Allison Mack. Allison joined NXIVM, but unlike Crook, who would go on to leave the cult, Allison grew to enjoy it. The Hollywood Reporter stated she became, quote, an enthusiastic proselytizer. Allison Mack would even co-create The Source, a program inside NXIVM, which specifically targeted actors for recruitment. Her status as an actress allowed her to quickly rise the ranks, sliding her way into Rainier's inner circle. At this point, Rainier's trusted few included Nancy and Lauren Salzman, Sarah and Claire Bronfman, and Allison Mack. Rainier fabricated a sense of, quote, corporate feminism. As a result, these women all became staunch defenders of Rainier. The Bronfman sisters would even use their wealth and power to ask district attorneys to start criminal investigations into anyone critical of NXIVM to further validate the company and quell public backlash.
Girl boss shit, dude. Fucking girl boss shit.
Rainier decided to create the Knife of Aristotle, a NXIVM-affiliated news company. According to multiple journalists, including Iker Sposio, Mary Von Au, and Brock Wilbur, fake staff members hired journalists to gain media approval, and the Knife of Aristotle was considered a cult-like fake news factory. However, Rainier's fake news wasn't.
Bro, I hate to make this joke, especially because I look the way I do, but why the fuck do all cult leaders look like this? Yes, I'm aware I kind of look like that right now, okay? I know, but like also, come on, dude! What the fuck? Christ.
Enough. So he and his faithful followers sought to distance themselves from possible
It's just
cult
a look.
allegations. One way he accomplished this was by co-founding the World Ethical Foundation's Consortium, a non-profit organization which sponsored a meeting with the Dalai Lama in 2009. The Dalai Lama visited the NXIVM headquarters in Albany, where he spoke on stage about morality and inner values. The entire endeavor was said to have cost around $2 million.
Let's keep it a $150 here, okay? Maybe the Dalai Lama doesn't have the fucking superpowers, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. How the fuck did you get duped into pushing this shit, dude?
which goes to show Rainier and his followers would do anything at this point to paint NXIVM in a positive light. During the Dalai Lama's visit, Rainier's confidant Sarah Bronfman had a sexual relationship with Lama Tenzin Doden, the monk who had set up the Dalai Lama's appearance. This is one isolated example of how NXIVM's ideology could be capable of overpowering others. Before leaving, the Dalai Lama gifted Rainier and his company leaders scarves representing purity. These scarves were symbolic of NXIVM's sash system. Frank Parlato, a former member turned investigative journalist and critic of NXIVM, compiled an account.
The Dalai Lama was like, I don't even do this for anybody, okay? You are uniquely pure guy. My man said, we're not out here giving it to every single person, okay? But we're going to give it to you. Wait, did you say he smashed
Dalai Lama's appearance? This is one isolated example of how NXIVM's ideology could be capable of overpowering others. Before leaving, the Dalai Lama gifted Rainier and his company leaders scarves representing purity. These scarves were symbolic of NXIVM's sash system. Frank Parlato, a former member turned investigative journalist and critic of NXIVM, compiled an account of the sash color system that Rainier used to codify his most loyal followers. White sashes were given to students.
One of his monks smashed.
Anyone who had paid to partake in a NXIVM program got a white sash.
He got that dolly riz.
Were given to individuals who worked for free at NXIVM but also paid dues. Orange sashes were given to proctors, who also earned a small salary or commission for recruiting. Green sashes were given to senior proctors. These sashes generally cost a member around $1 million in overall investments. Blue sashes were for counselors and could cost around $5 million. These members made a salary, but nothing compared to the money that they put in. Purple sashes were reserved for senior counselors, and according to Parlato, this level was extremely hard to reach, and over the course of the company, only 3 people ever did. Gold was the last sash, and it was dedicated towards the perfect co-founder, Nancy Salzman. And Rainier? He wore a white sash because he thought of himself as a student, always there to learn.
You all have to judge your guru.
I was afraid of music guru. Oh, I'm not a guru.
This was just a tactic he used to seem humble before his peers. Clearly, this sash system was just a scam to funnel more money out of his consumers' pockets. Members were conditioned to place extreme value on $7 pieces of fabric. Following the momentous event in Albany, Rainier thought he had done well, and that NXIVM would be seen in the media as an authentic self-improvement company. In reality, Rainier was delusional. Within the same year, 9 employees of NXIVM left the company and told the Times Union of, quote, concerns about unethical practices and the alleged abuse of his leadership status to sexually manipulate women in the organization. A string of serious allegations would follow.
Always.
Tony Natalie and Barbara Boucher, Rainier's former partners, came out against him, alleging serious abuse, with Natalie telling Vanity Fair, quote, Rainier had insisted that Tony Natalie keep the body of her dead puppy in her garage freezer and to look at it daily. The only explanation for Rainier's orders is sadism. The victims of Rainier's abuse began to grow bolder as more and more women came forward, and NXIVM's veneer began to fade. In 2012, the Times Union published an expose detailing 3 separate accounts in which Rainier abused underage girls. In 2014, 5 years after the Dalai Lama's visit, Kristen Keefe, another longtime partner of Rainier, decided to break from his group and left with Galen, Rainier's first child. According to James Adato, she fled with her son, leaving an email stating, quote, I have full, sole, legal custody of Galen. Keith was experimenting on him. I had to get Galen away. The most shocking revelations to come from Times Union's expose included Rainier grooming 3 daughters of a NXIVM family and creating a secret group within the company called Dominus Obsequious Sororium, or DOS for short. This translates to Master over the Slave Women, or Lord of the Obedient Female Companions. The 3 daughters he groomed eventually became his sexual partners. Mariana, who was the oldest, was sexually abused, becoming the mother of Rainier's second child. Daniela, the middle child, was groomed as a minor and began a sexual relationship with Rainier right after her 18th birthday. The youngest daughter, named Camilla, was sexually abused by Rainier from roughly 2005 to 2017. She was only 15 years old when it began. Years later, Daniela would go on to testify in court that she had been forced into solitary confinement in her own home by Rainier. Her family was prevented from speaking with her, and Rainier's confidant Lauren Salzman was in charge of making Daniela, quote, learn from her mistakes. For 2 years, she was unable to leave a dark room with only a mattress, pen, and paper. Rainier's sexual abuse of these 3 sisters was proven using prolific evidence such as Daniela's testimony, hospital records, as well as sexually explicit images of the girls in his home. However, sexual predation, assault, and was not enough for Rainier. A sick sociopath like himself needed more power. Thus, he secretly built a sex cult within NXIVM to perpetuate his darkest motives. By design, Rainier was the only male member of DOS, going by the alias Grand Master. It is estimated that over 150 women joined DOS, the first members being Allison Mack, Lauren Salzman, and Nikki Klein, a Canadian actress best known.
Nikki Klein is the person. Nikki Klein is the person that is the reason why we're watching this right now. Nikki Klein is the person that that fucking James Lindsay, Conceptual James. I mean, here it is. By the way, this is Nikki Klein. I would like to thank the leftist haters and bots for reminding me so many times about a fun day I had with my friend Nikki Klein. Nikki Klein here says, it was a lot of fun. Your haters should try it sometimes. James Lindsay is the fucking right-wing guy who's like, okay, groomer. Who's posting about okay, groomer. Understand, she's literally the fucking, like, third in line for DOS. Like,
for her performance.
Like an actual child sex trafficker, dude. An actual groomer. A literal fucking groomer, dog.
In sci-fi television series Battlestar Galactica, Lauren Salzman, one of Rainier's most trusted members, explained the meaning behind DOS as a way to worship Rainier and foster an environment of, quote, total obedience and secrecy. Rainier was able to convince women to join his cult because he told them that it was for women only and that they would feel empowered. The structure was almost exactly the same as his other MLM businesses. Women in DOS would recruit slaves, who would then be expected to recruit slaves of their own in order to eventually become masters. Each slave owed service to not only their master, but the master of their master, and so on, with Rainier being at the top of the pyramid. Rainier was able to maintain control over DOS by collecting collateral, which was highly damaging pictures, videos, or financial information pertaining to each member.
This is super typical of cults.
This collateral would be released if any of the women tried to leave the cult. The women of DOS had to also adhere to Rainier's preferences. For example, he liked women exceptionally thin, so he implemented an extremely restrictive diet and documented their food intake. Some of the women in DOS were even branded with a cauterizing pen. The women would go to Allison Mack's home and be filmed, as collateral, fully naked and branded with Rainier's initials. Rainier hid the fact that it was his initials from a majority of the women because he knew how demented it was, and only those fully committed to him could be trusted with his true vision. Audio recordings of Rainier were played at his trial, which stated, quote, the person should probably ask to be branded. They should probably say that before they're held down, so it doesn't seem like they're being coerced. Rainier believed that DOS would grow to spread across the entire United States. He pictured pictured his cult growing to encompass thousands of members, filled with women who had power and influence but were blackmailed to still be his slaves. It's not hard to believe that any of Rainier's relationships were consensual. The responses for his actions are horrific, and some of you may not want to hear this. There are a few women who I've spoken to and counseled that say they never had an orgasm in their life until they were. And of course, Rainier would carry this sick ideology over to the courses at NXIVM. For instance, sub-courses titled Sex and Orgasm and Abuse, Rights, and Injury taught that women achieve ultimate pleasure from being and that sexual abuse of a child was not a crime. In Rainier's twisted mind, Das would thrive for the next 2 years until 2017, and the New York Times published articles on Rainier's slavery, branding, and abuse. In the wake of these articles, Rainier fled to Mexico with members of his inner circle. He tried to hide, but was soon apprehended in Puerto Vallarta by Mexican federal police after the FBI issued a warrant for his arrest. In Rainier's indictment, he was charged with sex trafficking, conspiracy for sex trafficking, and conspiracy to commit forced labor. On June 19, 2019, after his federal trial, Keith Rainier was found guilty of sexual exploitation of a child and possession of child porn, sex trafficking and attempted sex trafficking, forced labor, identity theft, conspiracy to alter records for use in an official proceeding, racketeering conspiracy, and wire fraud conspiracy.
I want people to understand this right-winger, famous for calling himself someone who enrages the groomers, famously wearing this shirt earlier today, not even a real shirt, it's like Photoshop, but he always is like attacking groomers. He's literally openly stating how fun it is that he loves hanging out with one of the fucking top G's, one of the top groomers in the sex cult that you're watching. Okay? So understand, when right-wingers talk about shit, it's projection, okay? Almost always projection. These are the people who literally think being gay, okay, being a queer person that is around children automatically makes you a fucking groomer, but actual fucking groomers are not real groomers, okay? Like that's crazy.
He was given a 120-year prison sentence, along with being forced to pay a total of $3.4 million to 21 victims and $1.7 million to the US government. Rainier was given the heaviest sentence, but that didn't mean others weren't culpable. Rainier's closest confidants had been complicit in his nightmarish fantasy. Allison Mack pleaded guilty to racketeering and racketeering conspiracy, receiving a light sentence of 3 years in prison. Nancy Salzman and her daughter Lauren both pled guilty. Lauren received 5 years of probation, while her mother was sentenced to 3.5 years or 42 months in prison. Claire Bronfman pleaded guilty to conspiring to conceal and harbor an illegal immigrant for financial gain, as well as fraudulent use of identification. She was sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison. Her sister Sarah was not charged with any criminal wrongdoing. According to Esquire, quote, "She is even entitled to make money off of NXIVM property she owns." Following the fall of NXIVM in 2020, HBO released The Vow, which followed the experience of individuals involved with NXIVM. It detailed the stories of members who escaped the cult, including Sarah Edmondson, Mark Vicente, Bonnie Peace, Anthony Ames, and Catherine Oxenberg. The docuseries includes footage shot by Vicente as part of NXIVM's plan to constantly document Rainier for future generations, and to showcase how wise he was. Starz also premiered a true crime docuseries into this corporate cult called Seduced, Inside the NXIVM Cult. This series follows India Oxenberg, or the daughter of Catherine, a former member of NXIVM who had a hard time coming to the realization that the self-help organization she trusted was truly a cult. Additionally, other women from
Nikki Klein was a NXIVM member, Canadian actress from Vancouver, British Columbia, the Battlestar Galactica chick. Klein is an outspoken NXIVM member and supporter of Rainier, the person that is in jail now. Okay. Rainier was the head of the sex slavery part, known as a Rainier was the grandmaster. We already talked about this. Nikki Klein defends him still. Okay? Yeah. Klein was believed to have a high position within DOS and was known as a first-line slave, as in she had a bunch of other slaves underneath her because it was a slavery multi-level marketing. 3-minute long video featuring Klein and Rainier's inner circle. Interview with Klein and Klein organizing support while he's in prison.
So my name is Eduardo Asunsolo, and I'm one of the founders of the Forgotten Ones. We come and we dance for the people inside of MDC Brooklyn. Because of COVID, they haven't had visits in like 6 months almost. It's been, I guess, that they have something to look forward to, which seems to be really, really good for them.
This is where Rainier is being held. But the group's recently revealed connection to MDC inmate Keith Rainier has raised alarms.
We didn't want to at first. My friend in there is Keith Rainier.
He said, my friend is in there.
My friend in there is Keith Rainier. I was a teacher in NXIVM for 10 years, which, you know, that's why we didn't want to at first to say who we were, because we knew it was going to be done, it was going to be made about these things.
We have a friend who is...
There it is, Nikki Klein. That's the person that James Lindsay, Conceptual James, loves hanging out with, by the way. Like, again, I wonder if they've hung out outside of the fucking prison to dance for Keith Rainier together. This is the last motherfucker on the planet who could talk about grooming, okay? That's the reason why I needed you guys to watch this fucking documentary, or at least Philion's video on it, okay? That's why we watched this 30-minute documentary, to prove conclusively, without a fucking doubt, that Conceptual James, aka James Lindsay, has no business saying that like gay people are fucking groomers or pedophiles when he is quite literally a fan of the OG groomer.
NXIVM, such as Naomi Gibson, Tabby Chapman, and Kelly Teal, share their stories of the abuse they suffered or witnessed. It's hard to believe that stories like this can actually happen. Like the cult leaders before him, Keith Rainier used manipulation, coercion, blackmail, and abuse to control his victims. He brainwashed women into believing what they were doing was part of something greater, separate from himself. Through the stratification of his cult, he was able to shift blame and responsibility on those who worshipped him, and normalizing the behavior for others. It's impossible to point to one single event that leads to cult formation like NXIVM, when in reality, it's years and years of interpersonal conditioning. Remnants of Rainier's empire exist on YouTube. Conversations with Keith Rainier showcase a man who seems to have it all figured out, when in reality, It's a shell of a human, only thinking about his next victim.
This is like the Rubik's Cube to a certain extent. A lot of people play it just competitively, but it's actually like a puzzle.